Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Guru. Welcome everybody to our mini class series on the topic of balance. And we've been talking, this is the third class, and today I'd like to talk about that balance, you might say, between the heart and the mind that I think all of us experience at times. My gut feeling, my feelings, that sense of feeling that we have, that intuition, it's intuitive. What is motivating me in my actions? And let's explore that a little bit. And I have a reading I'm going to share a little bit, and I think it's essential that we understand that feeling is the essence, really, I think, what makes us human. They say, and Patanjali says, when he's talking about consciousness, the four aspects of consciousness, you've got mon, buddhi, ahankara, and chitta, then, mind and intellect and ego. And that last one, chitta, the sense of feeling. And I think it's this last one that really what makes us human. It makes us who we are. And modern science and technology, sooner or later, they're going to have robotics, the robots, peoples, androids, these sort of science fiction concepts are going to become a reality probably. But will it be possible to truly create another human duplicate? I don't think so, because it's this element of pure feeling, chitta, that is the essence of who and what we are, you could say. The sense, or who we think we are. It's this essence of gives rise to ego, because ego, you could say, is disturbed feelings, that disturbed chitta, and the very essence. When we speak about yoga, we say yoga is the neutralization of the waves of feeling. And so we have to have this element of feeling within us. And there's this famous line in the autobiography at the end of when Master has that experience of cosmic consciousness. He says, I perceived the empyrean of this creation was oh, darn, I want to get it right. So let me look exactly and find that quote. It's, I cognized, that's what it was. I cognized the center of the empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my heart. And the center of everything is that sense of feeling perceived in the heart. And so this is what we're after in the practice of yoga, is learning to bring ourselves into balance and to balance those waves of feeling. And when we balance the waves of feeling, it's not that we don't feel. Far from it. It's feeling becomes pure. Because you could say, when we really, in the common language, we talk about feelings, we're really referring to emotions. When people's emotions, when you become emotional, basically your feelings are disturbed. And consequently, whenever feelings are disturbed, whenever we experience what we call emotions, we're really acting from the ego. And so to transcend ego consciousness is to bring those feelings into a state of calm rest. And at that point, this is, of course, when we begin to transcend ego consciousness and we reach that state of yoga, which is the pure state of yoga. I was watching, this goes back many years now, but there was a famous movie. It was called The Terminator. Some of you, action movie. And I remember there was a scene from, it was a series of movies, actually. There was a scene of one of them, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the hero. He comes in, he saves the young boy. And at the end of the movie, he has to return. His job has been done, and he allows himself to be melted in and the boy, of course, is very emotional. He says, "Don't leave, don't leave, don't leave," because they'd formed this bond as Terminator protected him through the movie. And the boy begins to cry. And I remember now Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, he plays a role that he's a robot, really. He's not alive in the sense of a human. And so he's very stoic and doesn't show any emotion. And at the end of the movie, he says, "Oh, now I understand what that water is in your eyes." Because the boy starts to cry, begins to show emotion, and then he allows himself to be destructed. But this is what separates. He's a robot, but it was sort of implying here that now he understood what it meant to be human, to have those emotional feelings. Not necessarily the emotions so much, but but pure feeling is behind those emotions. And we find that we get ourselves into all sorts of trouble when we begin to express egoically those emotions outwardly, and the ups and downs, the fluctuations of life, which are the opposite, you could say, or of that pure balanced feelings within the heart. But it's sometimes not understood that when we speak about neutralizing our feelings, we're not getting rid of emotions. What we're doing is we're getting rid of the fluctuations, the likes and dislikes, and bringing them into a calm state. That is yoga. And I'd like to begin today by reading something that Swami Kriyananda wrote. And I'm going to read this. He said, he was giving advice in this case. He says, don't be attached to your feelings, and yet use them. Accept them. Now he's speaking here of feelings, the common emotional feelings of the day, that we feel. He says, don't be attached to those feelings, yet use them. Accept them. Direct them in the right way. And the way to do that is always to return first to yourself. Don't act under the influence of emotion. You see, to act under the influence of motion is the opposite of wisdom. Wisdom is to act under pure feeling, to do what is right. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom is knowledge of God's will, and to do God's will, and so act under the influence of. Don't act under the influence of emotion. Try to get your emotions centered. Get yourself centered, and then use that emotion in a constructive way. You'll find that under the influence of emotion, you'll always say something or do something that you regret later on. Just about always. Speaking personally, I think I can say always, but I'm not sure I can say it for you. It's very important to be able to speak from a center. Be centered first and then speak. Don't talk off the top of your head. Now, I read that and I would say, can any of us relate to that? I certainly can. Don't talk off the top of your head, and don't talk when you're not centered, because otherwise you're going to get yourself into trouble. And he's given us a lot of points in here that, just to summarize, he says, don't be attached to your feelings. When there's a sense of attachment, you're acting from likes and dislikes. You're acting from the ego. My heart tells me I've got to do this, and if somebody contradicts you, are you sure about that? Yes, it has to be that way. And the question is, what if it isn't that way? How are you going to feel? If you feel depressed, sad, anger, all of these things, obviously you're acting from an emotional side. So you have to be able to not be attached to your feelings. Or you could say being attached to your feelings is an indicator that you're acting in an emotional way. And he says, return to your center first. First get calm, then act or speak. Now, perfect calmness may be elusive, but yet we can try to, it's traditionally counting 10, getting yourself centered, and then act, and you're more likely not to regret what happened. But now he doesn't say to just get rid of your feelings. Swami's not saying that. He says, use your feelings. Use your feelings by accepting them and then directing the energy behind those feelings, the impulses behind those self, in the right way. And of course, ideally, you're acting according to wisdom, your higher knowledge, and wisdom comes out of calmness. And so ideally, that's it. But you do the best you can. But use it, because if we're embodied, we have an ego, we have these feelings, we have these emotions. To just say, well, I don't want to be emotional, I'm not going to do anything, that is not going to be constructive. You have to act. And in the Gita, of course, Krishna says nobody got out of action by not acting. You have to be able to transcend that action. And so we use them. But try our best to come back to that point of center. Take time out if necessary. Just stop, whatever it is. If you feel that emotional, just stop. And then get your center and then act again. And I think everybody, when we act, and we can see this dichotomy between the action from feelings, action from you might say reason, this balance between reason and emotional feeling. I think one of the biggest lessons that you could say, learned over the practice of my lifetime in trying to balance these two, is something that Master said that all of us should keep in mind. Reason follows feeling. And you're going to find that we like to think of ourselves as being objective, but we really, if we go deeply within ourselves, we have an emotional feeling. We have a like or we have a dislike, inclination, we have a preference. And that's going to inform our reason. And then, because your reason is going to then justify why that is the right thing. As long as we're in the world of duality and our likes and dislikes, we're not wise purely in the pure sense, because we don't know God's will. We don't know what the higher Dharma actually is. We can think we do, we can try to do it, but we have to realize. And so we're going to be in this human frame, this human consciousness. We're going to be influenced by our feelings. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't act. We just have to keep that in mind, that yes, I'm going to act, and maybe I'm being a little bit misled here by my feelings, but I have to act. But keeping that in mind, because so many people, or some people, say, oh, it's reasonable. And they think that their reason is totally in control. Now, ideally, we want to harmonize those two. But what happens is we really need to be guided by intuition, pure intuition. And pure intuition is a fruit of when our heart's feelings are perfectly calm. And calmness is the channel through which we ultimately reach pure intuition. The heart becomes purely calm. We calm the likes and dislikes, and then that intuitive perception guides us into God's will, that's wisdom, or guides our feelings into love and feeling that oneness that comes with purely the heart's intuitive feeling. So this is what we're after, but I want to emphasize that we don't get there through suppression of the feelings. We have to use our feelings to the best we can, use our emotions to the best we can, raise them up to the highest possible, and we do that through trying to make ourselves or induce ourselves into a calm state. Now, all of you, I think, have some understanding of yoga and the chakras and how there are certain elements of our being, consciousness, are centered in our feelings, and proclivities are centered in various chakras. Well, of course, the heart is, you could say, the center of feeling, and it's, of course, feeling expressed emotionally. It's a heart quality, and the goal when we have emotions is try to constructively use those emotions to lift those emotions up to a higher level. Because emotional energy, you could say it's the center of our chakras, of the fourth chakra being the center of the seven. Emotional feeling can go up or it can go down. And so our job as yogis is to try to raise that energy rather than letting it go down and to express as anger or feeling or hatred or any of those restless activities. And so to raise the energy up, and it's important to go up because this is the center of feeling at the heart. The next center up is the throat center. And as I may have explained before, the throat center is the center of calmness. Calmness resides in the throat center, the throat chakra. So think of it, you might even practice this a little bit. When you're feeling or when you're speaking, and think of it, this is a good way. Oftentimes when we're emotional, we're going to say something. Put your attention here at the point between, or at the point of the throat, and try to induce that center of calmness and feel that from that point. And try to then fill your voice with that vibration of calmness. And by passing the life force up from the heart, up the spine, to this center of calmness, ultimately what we want to do is pass through that and project it from the spiritual eye outward into the world. And so so we're wanting to bring our energy up to the spiritual eye, but it gets there through this channel that goes through the throat and up through calmness. And then when we bring this upward, we find that then our feelings become harmonized, and there's a tendency to speak from a higher point of consciousness when we're projecting our will, we're projecting our ideas from the point between the eyebrows. But we have to go through this center of calmness. And this doesn't happen by suppression. This is to suppress is to push the feelings out of our consciousness into the subconscious, not express those. We have to, and so you might say, well, if I have these emotions, what am I going to do about them? And I have to put them aside. I don't want to act from those emotions. Well, the real secret is to transcend, is to raise that energy up. You might say, take the pole. If you have a certain feeling that's somewhat negative, try to induce the opposite, the polar opposite. You might say anger is. Compassion might be one, or empathy might be a positive feeling. Try to find something positive and raise those up. Now, there are situations where sometimes, because remember, emotions are not necessarily all bad. They're not bad. They're just binding. You see, when you act from an emotional position, you're acting from ego. Now, ego has its positive aspects to it, but they cause karma. That's the problem. There's a karmic tendency, there's karmic bind that happens when you speak from that. The energy is coming from ego. And so, but sometimes it's better to act sometimes egoically. Now, this is a piece of advice we have to be careful with, because we say, well, it's better to act egoically. Yes, in a good way, because you could say that emotion is, one time Swamiji defined emotion as the rocket fuel within us. It gets us moving. Sometimes you don't feel, if you don't have any emotion and any feeling, you just don't do anything. You're passive. And so sometimes you find people acting, there's a sense of anger maybe, they're acting out of that. But it's a righteous anger. So they see injustice, and so they want to act, and they're angry about it, wanting to go out and demonstrate and do something. Well, it's not going to bring peace. Angry demonstrations for peace are sort of against each other, and they work against each other. But yet, righteous anger gets us moving, it gets the energy moving, and it's got good intentions. It's got you're trying to raise that energy up, so it gets you going. But if it just stays there in anger, it ultimately becomes self-destructive. So you have to. But it sometimes, if used cautiously, this is why sometimes people go off the edge of the cliff with their righteous anger, and that's not any good. We have to not suppress it, but express that outwardly. And so, in a proper way, and this is, you could sort of, as a guide, if you're emotionally acting, why are you acting? If you're acting to achieve what is right, you see, then you're righteously trying to do the right thing. You're probably going to go more in a proper direction. Or are you acting to achieve what you want? They're not necessarily the same thing. And this is the mark of discrimination, to be able to see, is my desire what I want, or is it right? Now, this is a lifelong lesson in discrimination of what's the right action to do. And a piece of advice I've given in previous lectures is we're somewhat always wondering, is this the right thing? I want this. Now, why do I want it? Well, that must mean it's a desire. Yes, it probably is a desire, but is it a good desire or bad desire? One is check yourself. How attached are you to it? If you can be a little bit detached from it, I want this, but if it doesn't happen, okay. I personally am going to be able to deal with that, okay, and then I need to, if I can't, I need to work on that so that I can take that action from a little bit less personalized point of view. And then my emotions become a little bit calmed. And what's happening when you do this is you're converting, if you can convert a desire into a preference, I think that's a mark of moving in the right direction, because I still have a preference. I want this to happen. I think it's for the best. But if it doesn't happen, I'm okay. I prefer it. And so if you're going to be upset, if it doesn't happen, you're going to be sad, you're going to be worried, you're going to be fearful, then it's an emotional desire for that. And so you need to work on that. But if you can get it to the point of preferences, so all of us, to live in this world, we have to have a certain direction. I want to go this way, that way. And because I prefer good things. I prefer nice music rather than raucous music. I prefer food that is prepared well versus a food that is just not. So those aren't bad. Those are just preferences, because they're moving us in a direction toward ultimately, and they're guided by non-attachment. And so this is what we want to do, and try to sift within our own lives how to act in a way and overcome emotional. It's overcoming is essentially, which I'm going to talk about more next week, but it's overcoming the reactive process. As long as the heart is going up and down with likes and dislikes, we're reacting emotionally to something. And all these little emotions eventually bring us into a state of disharmony and unbalance. So when we're talking about becoming balanced, we're not, yes, we're balancing mind and with emotion. Sometimes I'm mindful, sometimes emotional. That's not really the balance we're speaking of. We're bringing a sense of calmness to our feelings, so that we're acting from that center. And when we find that when we can transcend that emotional motivation to act, and we're acting because, yes, my intuition tells me, and because I feel that oneness in the heart, and my intuition tells me it's the right thing to do, then you find, and you bring that up, the center of willpower, you have tremendous will backing you, because you feel God, you could say the universe resonates with you, and you feel the support of the universe behind you in your actions. And you say, I'm going to do what's right because I know it's right in my heart. I know this is right. And isn't that so? You often have felt, why did you do that? Well, my heart told me. But did your heart tell you from the intuitive sense, or was it from the emotional sense? But if you can bring that to the emotional, from the emotional to the pure intuitive motivation of feeling, you find that the universe will reinforce you, and you'll find whether you outwardly you win or lose, you're okay. But you did the right thing, and you had that backing, that inner feeling. So I'd like to give a few, how do you deal? This question comes up quite often. What do you deal with emotions? What do you deal with it? How do how do you, you might say transcend them or transmute them, maybe is a good word. I think the thing is if you feel that emotional flutter in the heart of emotion, is to nip it in the bud as soon as you can. Because what will happen is you feel the emotion and then the mind will come in, say, yeah, that was wrong. Yeah, I was mistreated, disrespect. And then, it supports the emotion, and then it's the siren starts going off, and and then it starts to build, and it becomes almost impossible after that to shake. And if it catches you, and then you might ask yourself, what am I going to do about this emotion? Am I going to be able to channel this into a positive direction or not? Because once it's got you, you almost have to somehow express it. But that's where you get into trouble, into brutal trouble, is how are you going to express that emotion? I think one of the things if we're yogis, it's absolutely essential. And I think this is, as Swami Kriyananda once said, this is an essential ingredient of freeing yourself in this lifetime, is to be self-honest. We have to have, and you could say consciousness or a feeling is the center of awareness, as I began. It makes us who and what we are. But we have to be aware of how that awareness is expressing ourselves and be very self-honest, introspective. Oops. See it when it's happening. And sometimes you can just watch it and the play is going to go on and you can't control it. But to at least be able to perceive it. And if you perceive what's happening, there's a possibility you might be able to do something about it. But so many people have no self-awareness, or they haven't cultivated that self-awareness because the emotion and their reasoning power are so linked, and one is in control and the other is supportive. And the thing of this dichotomy between reason and feeling, and reason being controlled by feeling, is you can't reason your way out. You've tried to say, well, I feel angry and I'm going to use my reason to get out of that. Well, it usually doesn't work that way. You have to direct that feeling and be able to handle it, and then try to put it into action in some way. That's probably the best you can do, into a neutral way that's not self-destructive. So that's why they always say, go out and chop wood, or go out and do something if you feel angry. Go out and not be around other people, or not directed at others. And I think this is how, if your feelings are in a certain way, involving other people to confirm your emotional feeling, usually is again, gets you in trouble. And like Swami, as we began, just don't say anything. Just let it be and rest until you regain that sense of calmness. Deep breathing. Count to 10, take a deep breath, and then just wait. And time passes, and if we remember, what is emotion anyway? It's the heart's feeling in disturbance, and these are fluctuations. All fluctuations go up, and then they go down. They go up, and they go down. And so we have to allow a certain amount of time to go by to be able to, that fluctuation to work itself out. And I think mental or emotional feeling, if you put the body in motion in some way, to allow to do something so that you might say distract the mind from that role of mental reinforcement, that helps bring you back into balance. And then you get yourself to a point of calmness. And then from that sense of calmness, then you can begin to perhaps analyze the situation of what happened and start again, try again. But remember, emotions are centered in the heart. Calmness is centered in the throat. Willpower, concentration is here. Our job as yogis is to lift this emotional feeling back, is to take it upward rather than allow it to go into restless rajasic activity. And this, if we can do this, we find we begin to bring ourselves into a state of harmony. And it takes a certain amount of self-control, self-awareness, and self-honesty to be able to do that. And lots of times, the basic question is, I like being emotional. It's pleasurable. I mean, honestly, isn't that so? Sometimes just there's a certain pleasure in getting very angry. There's a certain pleasure in expressing emotions outwardly. It's like you've got all this pent up feeling, and you just have a sense of wanting to express it outwardly. And there's a certain relief that comes with that. Got it off my chest. I feel so much better. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, you're on the roller coaster, and you haven't really solved the problem. And in the process, we may have created a whole bunch of karma with other people or with ourselves, and we've perhaps reinforced the habit. But that's life. Don't take it too seriously. Just say, I'm going to do better next time, and try again. And then slowly, you begin as you practice various techniques, becoming calm, meditation, learning, whatever it's going to take, practicing yoga exercises, getting yourself poised. All of these things begin to moderate that fluctuation again and again and again. And I think as time has passed, in my own life, this is what I've seen. I've seen a moderation of the reactive process. I don't take, I let it, I see it and experience it to some degree, but it's not affecting me. I'm not quite as attached as I used to be. And this is the process of yoga. And you ask yourself, yogis always ask herself, am I making any progress at all? I think so. And because overcoming that reactive process as we learn, the hard way many times, we begin to learn our lessons. And next week, I want to take this thought a little bit further, talk about the reactive process, because what brings us out of balance? It's this ups and downs of life and expressing, inwardly or not expressing or suppressing, all of these things. And we have a tool that helps us, and that's the tool of Kriya Yoga. And the effect that has in order to bring us as yogis back into a sense of balance. And I'd like to pursue that next time. I know I wanted to speak a little bit, but about, they say that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And I thought that'd be an interesting topic, but I think it's embodied in what I've said, because ultimately we're not men, we're not women. Outwardly, yes, we're that way, and we probably express, those are filters through which we express feeling. But it's not that men are less feeling. It's not that it's that men tend to channel that feeling in a different way, or express it in a different way, because feeling is essential to all of us. And of course, women are they're more emotional. Well, to some degree, that may be a perception that might be true in many cases. And we do need to bring these into balance, but it's not by being less this or more that outwardly. It's about going inward and finding the unity, the essence of what both of us are, men or women. We're here on Earth and between Mars and between Venus. And on this world of Earth, I think the lesson that we learn, and remember, we're neither one nor the other. Lifetime to lifetime, we've probably been everything in between. And our goal in this journey, lifetime after lifetime, is to understand and see pure feeling truly expressed is love. True feeling is truly expressed rightly is divine wisdom. And male and female perhaps outwardly express one little bit more one way than the other, but ultimately we're the same. That we come into harmony when wisdom and love are balanced and expressed truly in the right way outwardly, and then we become a harmonized person, and that's, I think, what all of us are seeking. And the tool that we have, especially to help us achieve that, is Kriya Yoga. And next week will probably be our last class. I want to, unless there's lots of questions that come up, but I want to express follow that train of thought in next week's class. So joy to all of you, and I hope to see you again next week. Om Guru.